what I'm going to discuss is the male reproductive system and the problems that can occur with it. We'll start off with how it's structured, so everyone knows we can all be on the same sheet of music, basically. But in the structure of the reproductive system, we have what is commonly called the testicles, which can go up and down voluntarily, which was taught to African men during the rites of passage to teach you how to make your testicles go up and down, which gives you more control. This temperature is regulated to be less than the body's temperature. That's why the testicle distend lower than the body, because once it's up in the body, it makes the sperm too warm. So it just drops down to regulate the temperature of the sperm, because the sperm has to be kept in a sac, which we call the epididymis, where it matures. It takes about 3 days to 7 days when your health is bad. But it takes longer because sperm matures on a solar cycle. Unfortunately, everyone thinks there's a lunar cycle involved here, but it is not. In any case, we get to the rectum, which makes this area highly congested. Therefore, constipation can cause bacteria to migrate over to the prostate and into the bladder and these tubes here, which are called vas deferens. We have all of these European names. Just forgive me, I'm going to use them, but I'll use African names later. And then we have the bladder, where urine is stored after the electrolytes are taken out in the kidneys. We have a recycling system called the kidneys that take out the vital vitamins and minerals out of the water in the system. The kidneys get rid of more waste than the bowels. It's just some kind of European mythology that people think that the waste is coming out in the bowel movements. That's just food. Kidneys excrete more waste than your rectum and bowels. They're responsible for getting rid of cellular debris, as we call it, dead cells. Then we have the adrenals that sit on top of the kidneys that are in charge of what we call the emergency energy, which is used by a lot of black people under white racism or stress or things that occur in European captivity. So you can see the relationship between the kidneys and the testicles. Therefore, anything you do to the kidneys impacts the testicles. Anything you do to the testicles impacts the kidneys. We call this the law of complementary pairs. That's why you can treat the testicles by treating the kidneys. Then we get into the fluids that people just call ejaculation. We have the cowper gland that secretes a fluid that somewhat antibiotic, gets rid of the waste from the urine that passes down this tube here, the urethra. Urethra, I mean. Then we have the seminal duct here. The seminal duct basically is what supplies the food that nourishes the sperm. The sperm is created in the testicles and is transported up this tube, where you get the combination of fluids from the seminal vesicle, and the prostate muscle contracts and expands and milks the fluid from the testes, from the seminal duct, gets the mixture by contracting and expanding, and then you get the ejaculation, which is a muscular response and has nothing to do with orgasm anatomically whatsoever. But there's a lot of confusion in the male reproductive system, mostly because the people who explained it to black people have been confused themselves. Now, as you can see from the position of the prostate, it's in a clustered area there. It really is in an area that can cause a lot of problems because it just swells up or gets inflamed, then it can shut off this tube here. And that can cause problem in urinating, it can cause dripping, it can cause the person not to stop urinating, it can cause urine retention, it can cause urgency, just by the prostate swelling up or getting inflamed, starting prenate. I'll show you what it looks like when it starts deteriorating. But just to get that picture in your mind, because I'm going to be referring to this a lot. I'm going to be referring to the testes, which men call their balls, that are held in a sac, which is called the scrotum, and the epididymis, which can get inflamed and swell if you wipe yourself incorrectly or just pull down it too hard. This area will get inflamed first before the testicles get. And then we have this tube here where the sperm leaves epididymis, goes up this tube, and gets in contact with the seminal vesicle fluids where the prostate is located at, and gets milked by the prostate, which is a pulsating action. The problem problem occurs with the prostate when you get into prostate disease. I'm trying to give you an example of how a healthy prostate looks. Get this up here for you. This is the prostate right here. Just below the bladder, as I showed you in the previous drawing, and this is the seminal duct or vesicle as it's called. And this is a healthy prostate gland. And I'm going to show you a prostate gland is ill. This is enlarged prostate. It constricts the urethra, causing urine retention. That means the urine stays in the bladder, and then it migrates back up to the kidney, causing kidney inflammation and a lot of problems there, because the urine begins to be retained in the body too long. Then it starts inflaming the bladder and causes you have bladder inflammation, kidney problems, and eventually, because of the prostate, the kidney itself can deteriorate, and you can lose your kidney. Now then, I'm just going to show you some remedies before I get into the structure here, so you know it's not a lost cause here. These are the herbal remedies that are used for various conditions that are caused in the male reproductive system. For testosterone, which is a hormone that's secreted, which controls the outside of the female reproductive system and the inside of the male reproductive system, while the outside of the male reproductive system is controlled by estrogen, which we call the complementary pairs, or the male and female principle. We have herbs that can help increase sperm production, which is sarsaparilla, which some people call sarsaparilla. With sarsaparilla, we have saw palmetto. Sometimes I use yohimbe, but these are the main herbs for helping to increase the Sometimes I may use yuba ursi, but these are herbs that are primarily used for blood in the urine: horsetail, buchu, and comfrey. Then for enlarged or weakened prostate, I use echinacea and pygeum. Sometimes hawthorn berries is used also, but these are the principal herbs: echinacea, pygeum, for enlarged or weak prostate. Then as a tonic to help strengthen the reproductive system, the herbs yohimbe, ginseng, pygeum, and saw palmetto are used, sometimes with a little bit of ginkgo, as well as gotu kola, which is necessary to get the complementary stimulation of the pineal gland, or else the prostate won't get healthy. Then for premature ejaculation, which basically is a sign and symptom of the deterioration of the prostate. When the prostate starts deteriorating, it gets weak, and when it gets weak, it reaches threshold too quickly, and you get what is commonly called premature ejaculation. And for that condition, echinacea, yohimbe, saw palmetto, and comfrey is used. As a stimulant to help drive the system, the herbs damiana and yohimbe are used. Now, if you want to strengthen the prostate, as you can see, I'm using some of the same herbs over and over again, as you can see. Now, if I want to strengthen the reproductive system, I use ergot, and again, the herb comfrey and saw palmetto. For infections, such as yeast infection or inflammations, herbs such as golden seal, garlic, thuja, which some people call cedar chips, echinacea, portiaco, and buchu are used for infection. For inflammation, we use a herb such as feverfew, which will usually drop a temperature within an hour. It's very important to maintain a 98.6 temperature, because the body only functions under that temperature, and nutrients cannot get into the body unless it's at a stabilized temperature, which is 98.6, but the European have risen to 98.7 and 98.8. They have raised the normal again to make themselves healthy. Nonetheless, for inflammation, we use feverfew, golden seal, buchu, saw palmetto, and echinacea. for impotency, which is a sign and symptom of the deterioration of the reproductive system. We use damiana, ginseng, sarsaparilla again, licorice, saffron, and saw palmetto. Saffron is used to get rid of lactic acid waste. It's primarily good for runners or people who do a lot of exercising. To decrease the sex drive, which is a rebound tendency of the body. When the body gets very weak, you have a rebound effect where it tries to drive itself to reproduce before it dies and deteriorates, and you get this decreased sex drive, which you're trying to bring back to the increased side. So we use sage and skull cap and hops and life everlasting, belladonna, which I don't advise you to use because it can be rather poisonous, and marjoram, which is used as a seasoning, and black willow is used to decrease sex desire or drive, which is very confusing because there's no such thing in nature as a sex drive. There's a reproductive drive that plants have and animals and insects, but they do not have a sex drive. A sex drive is primarily something you teach to slaves to make the breed. Humans have a reproductive drive. The sex drive is another bit of European stupidity that I don't want to get into right now. To strengthen the prostate, we use pumpkin seed oil capsules. Actually, you can eat raw pumpkin seeds, but people have a tendency not to masticate thoroughly. And it helps get the zinc into the system. Now the supplement is called histidine. Histidine should be taken at night. It causes the relaxation of the penis sponge tissue, which causes engorgement, which results in erection. Histidine is amino acid. It should be taken around 2,000 milligrams at night to help that. Now we'll move on. I'm trying to help you have a better understanding of this system here so you know why it deteriorates and the things you can do to help it to regenerate. Now, of course, we have the bit of misinformation that the orgasm is triggered by the head of the penis. That is incorrect. The orgasm is triggered by the frenulum. The frenulum is the gathering, a folding of skin there that forms what you would call a pyramid kind of effect. Let me see if I can duplicate that for you. See, we have that pyramid right there. That's the male pyramid right here at the tip. That's what the pyramids look like in Giza, the fertility symbol. And in that pyramid there is called the frenulum, which triggers ejaculation or orgasm, as people think. Now, some people have what we call premature ejaculation, and in that case the penis is withdrawn and the blood supply from the frenulum is reduced so you don't get that stimulation. And what helps that is to say something, some principles of Kwanzaa or Ma'at, so that the stimulation from the frenulum can get reduced, and then you reinsert the penis and continue on with sexual intercourse. And every time you get to that threshold, just withdraw the penis, and that helps to train the system back to normal, because the deterioration of the prostate induces premature ejaculation along with overly being sexually stimulated by music and videos and the hormones in meat, chicken, and fish, which can also cause that kind of problem there. Now I'm showing the various types of diseases that occur in the reproductive system. Gonorrhea, as you see, is the fluid being secreted from the penis, which is basically a coal in the reproductive system, and mucus is being secreted, and is not actually a contagious disease unless you have some sort of break in your skin. In that case, you get invasion of other tissue in there. Then you have various types of sores, which are given various names based on the European who allegedly discovered them, such as syphilis and cankerin and granulomas. But I'll get back to this a little later. Now then, most of this information is kind of standard information. It was all in books, textbooks that were written long ago. One of the most popular ones is the one written by Imhotep called Asclepius by the Greeks, who mispronounced many African words. Their mispronunciations and mistranslations are what you call English, which is basically a Ebonic language in itself, just a bastardized form of Kemet. I'll show you some of the derivatives of the so-called English language, which is not officially a language, but a dialect, a mixture of primitive grunt words from the Germans and, of course, Latinized African words from the Greeks. But nonetheless, this is the Greek word Asclepius, which refers to Imhotep. And in the Hippocratic Oath, the Europeans, I swear by Apollo, the physician, and Asclepius, and they're referring to this black man here, who wrote his book is the oldest book in the compendium of medical work in history. I have some of the other works down the bottom here on this transparency, like the Cahun Medical Papyrus, around 700 BC, before the Common Era as it's called today. The Europeans call our books papyrus, so we won't know that they're textbooks. Yeah, but that's like calling the books today's trees. I mean, because they're made from trees. I mean, in any case, these are some of the older medical textbooks. We just have to stop using that word papyrus. It's absurd. The Cahun Medical Textbook, the Edwin C. Smith Medical Textbook, and the Ibers Medical Compendium Textbook, which are named after the Europeans who stole them. Now we get to the medical science that began in Africa. Here's a slide of a successful brain operation done at least 3,000 years ago. So what we have is a lot of African science coming back at us. Now, to understand the relationship between melanin and the pineal gland, you have to understand this area here, where you see this galaxy here, which is actually an electromagnetic force field that hovers above the pineal gland. It transduces the energy from the cosmic, the galaxy, into the human body, and it changes its shape and form according to the shape and form of the galaxy. Anytime a planet moves, one of those particles in that moves. It's what we have, as Africans have inner space and the Europeans have outer space. And this is I'm referring to right here is what you call the anatomical eye of Haru. That is what you call your third eye. Now move on here. Now it's quite easy to see when the male reproductive system is degenerating, when you're losing the ability to reproduce, when you're becoming infertile. It's very easily seen by the angle of the erection. It indicates the deterioration of the system. In young men who have all that vitality, as you have known in baby boys, their erection is on this angle, and their reproductive system is very vital, 100%. And they can pee in their face. And as they mature, the erection gets to this angle, which is about standard for a healthy reproductive system. But as the reproductive system deteriorates, the angle starts pointing down to the ground. And when it gets to this point, when erection is at that point here, the system is basically deteriorated. It's lost its vitality. It needs to be rebuilt with those herbs that I showed you earlier. Sometimes people use their hand to demonstrate that, like I would do like this. This is for a child, a youth, a baby, and then as the angle gets like that, then the system is deteriorating. So just looking at the direction of the erection, you can see how well your reproductive system is being nourished or malnourished. Now this is the basic herb that I was referred to a lot. and the remedy, which you should always take in order to sustain the vitality of the reproductive system. This is the saw palmetto berries. It's used for benign prostate enlargement, and 99% of all prostate diseases we use this herb called saw palmetto from the palmetto tree, or what you call the palm tree. And the using of those leaves was a symbol of fertility and vitality. So if you want to show fertility and vitality, symbolically you throw palm leaves on the ground and the man walks on them as part of a fertility ritual. I know you've heard of this in some religious groups. Palm Sunday, that ritual comes from that. Now I'm going to go over some of these remedies that are used for prostate disorders. The supplements, I want you to be kind of familiar with these. Let's see. Now, we'll start off with zinc. Let me see if I can get all of it here for you. Zinc, the suggested dosage of zinc is 80 milligrams daily. Zinc is used for healing all kinds of skin disorders. We use it for anorexia nervosa. That's when a person has lost their appetite. We use zinc for infections of all sorts, not just for prostatitis, inflammation of the prostate. Then we have bee pollen, which is usually 6 tablets to 2 teaspoons of raw bee pollen. But people with an allergy have to use a small amount and then increase it. Also, using bee pollen is good to get rid of allergy as well. Then we have the essential fatty acids that are used as a lubricant, and as you know, the hormones are all made from fats, or oil as you call it today, cholesterol. That's the foundation for the hormones. So you have to have the essential fatty acids to make the hormones. Garlic capsules 2 to 3 times a day. Usually they suggest 2 capsules, but all these suggestions are on the label of the supplements, and those suggestions are what we call a serving, because supplements, the herbs and the vitamins and minerals are considered a food. And so what the people do in labeling them, they give you a suggested serving, just like you fix a bowl of grits and you look on the box that says 1 cup is equal to 2 servings. That's all they're putting on the label. That is not a therapeutic level. That's just a serving. So they're telling you 2 capsules a day is not in the therapeutic range. Basically, you would have to double the amount of anything on the label and take it 3 times a day in order to get somewhere near a therapeutic level. Understanding that the body's metabolism is about 100% perfect when you're born, but after that point you start deteriorating. So if you take in 80 milligrams of, for example, of zinc, if your metabolism is good, you're getting about 60 milligrams out of it. You have to be damn good to get that much. So most people get about 40 milligrams out of the 80 that they're taking. That's why you have to double the dosage so you can get somewhere in the range of a therapeutic level. Now that I've cleared that point up. Some people take raw prostate tablets as part of the belief that eating a lion's heart makes you brave, and eating the bull's testicles makes you virile. So the Europeans are still into eating animal parts, and they call that the glandular system of medicine, where you can go in a health food store and buy some balls or some eyes or something and eat it. But as I mentioned before, there's a lot of mythology in European medicine, so just be rather careful there. Vitamin A is suggested you take 25,000 IUs, international units, a day, or take 15,000 IUs, that's beta-carotene, which is a precursor to vitamin A. Again, you're going to have to up that dosage, because to metabolize that amount, you have to be perfect, and I don't think that's so. So it's a potent antioxidant and immune system enhancer. Those are the new buzzwords of the day. Basically, that says nothing. What vitamin A does is help to stabilize your system, stabilize the vitamin D, and stabilize your ability to
stabilize your proteins and your calcium magnesiums. Vitamin A is part of what we call a sun nutrient. Your body takes the sun's energy, and from the melanin in your skin, you transform the sun into vitamin D. So what you're doing with vitamin A is doing some of that solar energizing of your system, which is done by your pineal gland and your melanin. And that eye of Haru that I showed you, your third eye. And we have vitamin E, as you see, they're using the same word, potent antioxidant and immune system enhancer. Potent antioxidant is the European word for melanin stabilizer. They don't want to tell you anything about this melanin thing, so they use all these words to get around it. But that means melanin stabilizer. Then we use other supplements such as the Brewers Yeast, not the Brewers Yeast that you use to bake the bread, because that'll strip your body of all kind of nutrients. You're going to use nutritional Brewers Yeast, because it's a good source of zinc and the B complex. Or, again, you can eat raw pumpkin seeds to get the zinc. Then they use kelp. 6 tablets a day is a serving measurement again, so you would probably have to double that. It supplies the body with trace minerals. Might as well clear up a little bit of that trace mineral stuff. Your body cannot metabolize, absorb any mineral in any form, because minerals are inorganic. What your body does is use the radiating energy from the mineral to stimulate the minerals already in your system, and then the minerals are taken out of your system. And so the body says, I can only deal with these inorganic minerals if they're wrapped in something alive. And that's what you call colloidals. When you wrap the mineral inside the plant cell, then the body can say, oh, it's alive, I can deal with it. Then it takes it into the system and stimulates the vitamins and minerals that are present. So we're trying to get to the electrolytes, as they call it today, by taking kelp. That's why people take Gatorade. They put a cheap form of sodium chloride, which is salt from the earth, in Gatorade, and they call it electrolytes, because minerals carry electrical charge. But they don't use kelp, they just use some cheap salt that you get out of the ground. They dig it up and grind it up and put it in the stuff, and people buy this salt and pay all this money for table salt when they're better off just taking half a teaspoon of Morton's table salt and putting some water and drink it if you want to get that kind of electrolytes. But I don't want to get into that kind of ignorance that takes place. Then we have lecithin, which is a emulsifier, a fat emulsifier. It helps metabolize fats. And it also helps if you got those little cricks. Sometimes you hear your knees or arms pop or something like that. Lecithin is used for that. It gets rid of it. That means you're not emulsifying the impurities. So you take the lecithin and it helps emulsify the impurities. By emulsifying, I mean the lecithin turns into soap. Actual soap that you wash your hands with, the lecithin turns into soap and scrubs out the vesicles, those tubes I showed you, the prostate tube and all that. That scrubs them out, gets the impurities out of it. So you take the lecithin for that. Your liver makes it anyway. Your liver makes thyroxine, ships it up to your thyroid gland, mixes it with potassium, and makes soap anyway. So if you have a healthy liver, you're there anyway. Magnesium plus calcium. Calcium and magnesium is taken together, usually in a 2-to-1 ratio, but that's only one calcium. The body functions on calciums. Calcium has a family. Everything comes in a family. You have the B complex, you have the C complex, you have the calcium complex. But in European science, they have isolated one type of calcium, and you take that, and it's usually calcium oxide or oxalate. So you can only get the calcium family if you're eating raw fruits. Then you're getting all of the calciums. But if you're just getting one, you're going to throw something off like a seesaw. Something's going to be thrown off balance. So if you're going to take the supplements, do eat raw food, and it will help stabilize your nutritional level. Then there's vitamin B6, which is commonly called paradoxin. Suggested dosage is 50 milligrams twice daily. B6 has anti-cancer properties. Remember those buzzwords again. Antioxidant, immune system enhancer, anti-cancer. All that means is that it helps stimulate or stabilize the melanin in your system. And sure enough, that's what B6 does. B complex vitamins should be taken, and vitamin C. 1,000 to 5,000 milligrams daily. It promotes immune function and aids healing. It promotes the function of your melanin. That's what the immune word means. Taking between 1,000 to 5,000 milligrams a day is pretty good if you live in the woods around fresh air and fresh water. But if you stand out on that corner and a bus drives by you, you're going to lose 1,000 milligrams. Just like that. And if you get a little upset and somebody goes by and just say, hey, nigger, and you're going to lose 5,000 right there. So you really have to double or triple that recommended dosage. Vitamin C stimulates what we call collagen, which is cellular glue. That's all it does, is keeping the cells together. It's making this collagen, this glue. That's what people buy shark cartilage for, to get the glue, to keep their sick cells together. Now I'm going to move on to another bit of information we need to know in order to understand the vitality of the system. Now, just by understanding the frenulum, that area that triggers orgasm, and understanding that function, that you have a solar system and a lunar system that are in the reproductive system of the male. You have the sperm, which is mature and is under solar system. Then you have the prostate, which is under lunar system. You have these different systems going on. The female system is basically the same. It does the same thing. The uterus is solar. The ovaries are lunar. That's why they have those 28-day cycles. That's what makes your testicles 28 days and makes your prostate a solar cycle, 30 days, 20, 30 days, like that. And not understanding the cycles, you get into a cyclic arrhythmic function, dysfunction. So you have a disease of rhythmicity because you don't understand the three rhythms in your body: the earth rhythm, the solar rhythm, the lunar rhythm, and the celestial rhythm, which I showed you when I showed you the third eye. That's the celestial, the galactical rhythm, which is a part of African calendars and not a part of Gregorian European calendars. It takes all the other rhythms out and just leaves in the lunar. So a lot of disinformation is given out, and so we don't understand the levels of orgasm. We just go for the level of orgasm. The penis gets erect, gets stimulated, you ejaculate. That's the end of it. So there's no stimulation of the pineal gland, which we call ejaculation. Ejaculation is when you get the orgasmic feeling, and you feel that feeling down in your reproductive system, and you visualize that feeling coming up your spinal cord up to your third eye and back down again. That stimulates your third eye, stimulates your melanin. It causes what we call regeneration and ejaculation, where you just want that feeling. You don't want to ejaculate. You want to ejaculate. You want to get that feeling and take that feeling and take it all the way up to your pineal gland so you can regenerate your system. That's the whole purpose, to regenerate, not to reproduce all the time. You just want to regenerate. But since we focus on erection, stimulation, ejaculation, which is a slave type of sex, this is the problem with the threshold level of the prostate. It's been trained by the Europeans and trained to like these kind of things that they like to eat. We have addiction for that type of stuff here. As you can see, the little pork here, and you can see the chicken fetus next to it. What the Europeans have done is gotten us kind of used to eating everything on the farm, so nothing on the farm goes to waste. We eat the pig, we eat the chicken, we eat the cattle, we eat everything around that was grown around the farm. We grow grass in our lawns, and we don't own cows, because that's a conditioning from the Europeans. When they lived in this area, they grew the grass because they had cows. You move in the neighborhood, don't own a cow, and grow the grass. That's a conditioning process here. So we have the grease on the bread, which they used to put grease on the bread to soften it during the Ice Age because they had rotten teeth and couldn't chew it. So they would put grease on it, and later on when they invaded Africa, they started putting olive oil on it, and then later on they started putting milk grease on it, which you call butter, to soften the bread because of their teeth were rotting. So we go through these rituals and don't know where they're attached to. It's like you soak the bread in the wine or water to make the bread soft. If your teeth are bad, you want to soften the bread to eat it. And Europeans' teeth were rotting out, so they would have this bread that was hard, and then they'd soak it in water, and then they could drink it. And that's why they say toast and drink. And you say toast, and it's no toast around. That comes out of their tradition, and this is the whole setting here is based on their tradition. That's why you have the knife close to the plate. They're the only culture that does that, to protect their food supply. They hold a knife with one hand, eat with the other, because they were protecting their food supply. This whole setting here is part of a ritualistic setting coming out of what we call the Chalcedonian homosexual cult. But if you don't know anything about the European history, you just don't understand why they put the milk with the grains, because that's a fertility symbol. It has nothing to do with nutrition. Then you understand why they have symbolism like the semen on the lip, which is sexually erotic to them. So they have people making these pictures with semen on their lip, Spike Lee and all that. That's a part of the homosexual cult. And then when you're just following what they're doing, calling on their forces and their gods and their... I don't want to just overburden the point here, but this is their home sweet home, sure enough, with the bacon and the milk, and which is basically a type of plastic pus after they cook it to that temperature. Let me get away from this one, because I'm trying to educate you here. Get away from this damn thing, man. Please. I don't want to talk about this now. The problem with that type of eating is it's very destructive to the pineal gland and to the prostate, because the waste cannot get out the system. It's not in your nature. It's in their nature. So you're eating out of your nature, and the body says, I don't know what to do with this grease. I don't know what to do with this milk grease. I don't know what to do with this chicken fetus. I don't know what to do with this bacon. I don't know what to do with this stuff, because it's already processed when it gets in the system. See, the body would take in the egg and heat it up to 98.6. What they have done is put it in the pan and cooked it. They have heated it up, so they have processed the food already. Everything on that table here is already processed, already heated up. Everything. The bread, the milk, the cornflakes, the bacon, the eggs, the butter, everything is heated up and cooked and processed. And a processed food, by definition, is a bowel movement. That's what you do when you eat. You process the food, the liver, the kidney, the pancreas, spleen, and the end result of processing is a bowel movement. So what they have on the table here is manure. It's a bowel movement. And so this causes toxins, so waste, cellular waste, which collects in your prostate, collects in your brain, and all over your body. And eventually the body can't throw out this waste, and it gets into the tubes and starts closing down the tubes of the prostate, the tubes of the eye, and people get glaucoma and cataracts because they can't filter out the waste out of their eyes, which should be a continuous flow. So the waste starts clogging up the tubes, and eventually it irritates because it's in there, and the body uses something called, if you can't use it, you lose it kind of thing. So the body says, I'm not going to give it nourishment. So it starts getting calcified. It becomes like sand, and it rubs against the healthy cells and irritates the cells, and the cells get inflamed. And then you get prostatitis. And then after the cells get inflamed, they start cooking and rotting, and they die, and then they get hard. Then you get an enlarged prostate where all these dead cells just accumulate and get enlarged, and then walk around thinking the whole problem is some bacteria, when actually it's the food that caused it. Someone eating out of their nature and eating in someone else's nature. It just doesn't make sense to do these sort of things. It doesn't make sense. It makes sense if you're a European, because you understand the sexual symbolism involved here. You understand that this is a symbol for a vagina. You understand that's a symbolism for oral sex. You understand all of these things. You understand where the honeycomb comes from. You understand that that's a symbol of a penis ejaculating, the semen's dripping off. You understand the sexual symbolism in European foods. You understand the sexual symbolism of a hot dog, why it's shaped like a penis. You understand that they say you get a hot dog and you put it between two buns. You put a penis between two buns. You understand this, you see. You understand you're out of your nature. And then you start looking like these people, pigs. So nonetheless, before you ended up in the hospital with your prostate removed, like this fella here, and rightly so. Well, I'm a health practitioner. Everyone should be healthy. But he's back in the hospital here, and they're trying to give him air, but his lungs are clogged up with waste and he can't get enough, so now they have to artificially give him air. And they have a tube here giving him food because the system is so clogged up and degenerated he can't even digest food through his mouth. So now they have to put it in his veins. And basically it's back to the same impurities that caused the problem in the first place. White sugar and water in his veins. The same pre-digested food that causes waste, causes the body to be so acid that it causes the sperm to be contaminated. We have a lot of men that come back from Vietnam and Saudi Arabia that their sperm is so full of waste that it burns the woman's uterus when they ejaculate. And we have a lot of brothers with not that severe acid waste in their sperm, but it's severe enough to cause problems to the uterus. That's why African men, over 50% of them have prostate problem and breast cancer. I am treating breast cancer in men. Aside from the usual prostate problems, I have to deal with breast cancer. And no one seems to know what's going on. It's just as I pointed out before, the waste gets inside of the cells. I'm going to show you an example of that. It gets inside of the nervous system itself. It blocks the ability to feel good about yourself. It gets inside of what we call your limbic system of your brain, and it helps you feel good about yourself, good about someone that looks like yourself. That means black people. So instead of hating black people, hating yourself, you clean up your system and give your system a chance to feel good about itself. And these chemicals that directly attack the limbic system, which is your feeling system. This is a picture of the nerves in that limbic system, which are basically destroyed by what you call the Walkman and the boom boxes, which causes a chemical toxin that destroys the nerves and rewires the system. But nonetheless, I want you to look once again at some of these remedies because it's quite simple to understand them. But with this toxic sperm and waste in the ejaculation fluids, we get into things like this. We get into children that are born dead, children that are so toxic that they drop dead in the crib, and we call that sudden infant crib death, where a child is so toxic, their heart is pumping so hard, not fast, but hard, so hard that it ages. See, people die from old age. When you take certain toxins in your body, your cells have to speed up to get rid of them. Like your body speeds up to get rid of alcohol, and people say they're getting high, speed up to get rid of the toxins from marijuana, which once you burn it becomes a synthetic chemical. So your body speeds up its energy to get rid of the marijuana, speeds up its energy to get rid of cocaine, so it's speeding up the aging. So when the baby dies in the crib, it dies from old age. It just drops dead, and they call it sudden infant crib death. Or the child is born deformed or with some birth defect, but because us African men are raised in a chauvinistic environment, we blame all birth defects on the women. But it took two to tango. That's what they taught me. So half of those children have to be caused by the men. But it's a market. So now we know that something going on wrong with the pregnancy, or the woman needs to terminate it. So they say, let's terminate it. Of course, they use the fetus to make immunization shots, just as they use the trypsin from the pig's stomach and the cancer cells from a black woman named Henrietta Lacks. They scrape all this together with some pus and makes vaccinations. All pus vaccination contain pork, just like all white sugar contains pork, because that's how you process it, just like enriched white flour contains pork, because that's how you enrich it. Enriched Wheaties, everything. All these pork sweeteners. So all these toxins are in the food, but if you don't know the science, you miss it here. So we get all these toxins in our system. It causes the baby to be born with some kind of compromise in their health, and so they get aborted. And they use these aborted tissues from the babies to for transplants, because black children's cells can adapt very easier than any other child, so they use a lot of tissues and internal organs for transplant. So here's a child being aborted. Of course, they can wait up to the 7th or 8th or 9th month for this process here, because all they do is wait for the child. They bring the child down with forceps, which are a nice name for a pair of pliers, clamp it around the baby's body, leg or arm, and pull it down, all the way down, but leave the head in. Because as long as the head is in, it's abortion, it's not murder. So once they get the head down to the opening of the uterus, they stick a pair of scissors in the back, like that, just poke it in, open up the scissors, which makes a hole, then they stick a little tube in that hole, like a hose, and suck out the brain, and the skull collapses, and then they take the baby out. And the Europeans call that a partial abortion, and then they cannibalize the parts and sell this part to that one, this part to that one, that sort of thing like that. And this is a new abortion that the Europeans are doing with black children.
What they call late term?
Yeah, late-term abortion, yeah. Of course, the black men that use the chemical castration material called alcohol do the same thing to their prostate, because alcohol is a lethal toxic chemical for the prostate, just as vinegar is an acidic acid, which is bad for the prostate. It basically chemically castrates the person. It kills the sperm production. It dehydrates the prostate. Alcohol does that, and vinegar does it. It doesn't matter where you get the vinegar from. It's just like it's asking me, is the alcohol made from corn liquor better than alcohol made from wine? It's all alcohol. The acidic acid made from apple cider vinegar is just as deadly as any other acidic acid. So acidic acid is dangerous for the prostate. Fermented food is dangerous for the prostate. Red meats, dairy products. As I mentioned before, the excessive ejaculation, not doing regeneration that I went over before about using that energy from the orgasm to stimulate your pineal gland and regenerate your system and raise you to these other levels of consciousness that they talk about, the 7 seals of Solomon, and all these gates open up in your understanding. What the brothers would say, their orgasm backfired. But this is what we're talking about, getting away from those chemicals, the synthetic chemical called sodium chloride that you call salt, very dehydrating. It's a preservative. It deadens the prostate. So we have to know that certain foods are not foods, as I mentioned before. They're just things that happen to go in your mouth. So the Europeans say it's in your mouth, so we can call it a food. But it's already been processed, so it's already in a state of degeneration when you get it. We have to understand also that those things such as chemicals that inhibit secretions and stop fluid flow, they stop the fluid nourishment of the prostate, like an antiperspirant, a cough suppressant. Your prostate's trying to circulate fluid, like the uterus is trying to circulate fluid, and then these cough suppressant, antidepressants hold the fluid in, which holds the waste in, which causes deterioration of the prostate. So these lethal chemicals, the Ultraban and all these things, are very deadly to the prostate. If you want to use some kind of a deodorant, use a natural one. But don't use those synthetic ones, because they suppress fluid secretion, which means they keep the waste in. They're going against the way the body's trying to go. That's why they call them anti. They're going against the body. Just like you have other things that go against the body. Antibiotics against life. Biology against biology, antibiotic. But that's not an issue here. I'm going to show you some of these foods. And we know that these foods are addicting because of the chemicals in them, and all these chemicals are harmful to the nervous system. Understand that all drugs work by altering, suppressing, or increasing the flow of melanin. They have to work on the melanin, or they're not a drug at all. So we have these addicting drugs that are in the food and causes people to have eating disorders. Eating disorders characterized by someone who eats all the time, snacks as you call it. The snack industry is made to keep addiction going, to keep a person eating all the time, so that the food industry can make money all the time. Keep the money out your pocket, in their pocket, so you eat all the time. That's called an eating disorder. Just like a person who drinks all the time, you say they have a drinking problem. Someone who smokes all the time, you say they have a smoking problem. Someone who eats all the time, they have an eating problem, which is a nice way of saying they're mentally ill. But in any case, the history of unsuccessful dieting, unable to stop eating, don't know when you're hungry, eat and don't know when you're full, eat when you're angry, eat when you're happy, eat when you go to the movies, eat when you watch a baseball game, eat before you go to bed, wake up in the middle of the night, eat again. That's an eating disorder. And that causes the waste to continually stay in the body, and the body doesn't get a chance to cleanse itself. And the waste, especially around a sensitive organ system like the reproductive system, is very sensitive to waste and toxins. So it sees some waste coming by and say, I can't get rid of it, so I'm going to stop it from destroying me, so it grabs the waste. And that's why you get all these toxins and stuff, and ladies get lumps in their breasts because that's toxins in their body, and the body said, I can't get rid of it, at least let me stop it from messing me up. So it grabs it. So you get these problems in the prostate and other organs because the prostate is a gland too, and it grabs waste. It says, I'm going to stop it. So it isolates it and it puts a little skin around it, which you call a cyst. And then you get the cysts and the tumors, which are caused by any kind of neuroleptic drug. Those are nerve drugs for your nervous system, which you call tranquilizers and sedatives, destroy the nervous system. So these chemicals come in, and then the body seals it, just locks them up in a cyst, or what you call a bump. So, well, the bumps on your skin are mostly the body's trying to transport worms out your body. You can look at it under a microscope. You see these little white heads, there's all these worms in it. That's the body isolating the worms and pushing them out. But nonetheless, people having an eating disorder are heading toward destroying their prostate. There's no problem with it at all. Just get the person addicted, and you can basically control them. It's also a way of population control. Let me just show you some of the foods that you should kind of like stay away from. Let me see, do I have it all on here? Meat or flesh, all living creatures that walk, swim, crawl, or fly, including insects. We know that people eat insects, caterpillars and termites. Well, people say you can eat fish, but most animals that eat fish eat the fish raw, and bears that eat fish eat the scales. And most animals that do eat fish eat it underwater. So just walk out in the ocean, open your mouth, and bite a shark if you want to, if you think you're a natural fish eater or something. I don't understand why people think that. But it's because of the hormones they put in it today that makes it so bad. Because these hormones cause cancer. Just like the anti-spermicidal gel that's in rubbers, it causes cancer. The powder in the prophylactics causes cysts and tumors. It also, when the rubber gets warm, the pores expand, so it goes into the uterus too. What I'm telling you about the prophylactics is a 30-year-old study. This is nothing new. This is in Lancet magazine. This is nothing new. It's just that it's an industry. So we have brothers, black men, putting their penis in a coffin, basically a 6-inch coffin, killing themselves with that powder in the in the rubber and the gel, which mimics estrogen, which causes cancer. But the hormones themselves doesn't. The artificial hormones used to be stilbestrol, then it makes Sinovax, which causes cancer too. They put in the meat. You can tell there's a lot of hormones in it. Look at the young girls, 9 years old, breasts and everything. Look at the young boys, pubic hairs. And when your external organs grow faster than your internal organs grow out of sequence, it puts too much demand on your internal organs. Your heart is built for a certain size muscle. Your kidney is built for a certain size muscle and weight. And when you put on all this extra muscle and weight like those freak European bodybuilders, you put an extra stress on your internal organs. African athletes don't look like that. They look just like you look, proportion to your body. When you start doing all that, the organs are made for a certain muscle mass and bone density. That's the way it's set. And when you start violating it, you put extra demands on your hormonal system. And part of your hormonal system is your prostate, your testicles that secrete testosterone and sperm. That's part of your hormonal system. And when you start putting these extra demands on it, it drains the supply. That in itself, that's why you see the female athletes' breasts go. Well, the same thing is happening to the male athletes. That's why most of the bodybuilders are gay. Well, you know, that's not getting Dennis Rodman and all that, but, you know, it's just a disease. A lot of the preachers aren't athletes either, but it's just a disease in our civilization. Now we get into the dairy products, which is mostly synthetic plastic. They put antifreeze in it and various other chemicals in it. It's pollutants. And the sweeteners, sugar, which is nothing more than, sugar is basically explosive by definition. You know, it's just explosive. It causes cells to explode. I don't know how else to explain it. Condiments, you can tell by the word, you've been conned. They used to call them medicaments in ancient time, but all of these are stimulants. Black pepper, the white pepper, the vinegar, because this is coming from another person's culture. You have to understand that black people have more peripheral circulation than any other race. Europeans have the least. So to increase the circulation to their skin, they use a lot of stimulants, coffee, nicotine, cocaine, cigarettes. They're trying to stimulate their system to be like you are. But unfortunately, your body isn't equipped to deal with their nature. That's why they have to eat meat, because it makes a waste product called urea. And urea has a property of freezing when it's hot and boiling when it's cold. And that's how they regulate their temperature, by keeping this meat in their body that makes urea, ammonia, and all these chemicals, the nitrogens. Nonetheless, we want to get to these healthy foods, the all green vegetables, the things that are raw, steamed vegetables, broccoli, zucchini, okras, dandelion. Oh, it's an endless list of it. Mustard greens, collard greens, cucumbers, garlic. We want to get more into the natural foods, so it keep you in a natural way, and more into the fruits, the apples, bananas, guavas, grapes, citrus fruit, pears, and unsulfured dried fruit, because sulfur has a tendency to destroy the prostate, the pineal gland, and creates cancer, which is all known. And we want to eat more of the melons, the watermelons, and more of the squashes, the acorn squash, butternut squash, to get the carbohydrates, because African people are carbohydrate-centered because of the high amount of fermentated bacteria, whereas Europeans have a high amount of putrefactive bacteria. And we eat more of the natural grains.